Coming to you live from the Cauldron's Edge, it's this week's Apocalypse. I'm your co-host, Kevin Lenihan. With me, as always, is John Ferris. John, how are you doing today? It's very spooky, obviously.
Yeah, that's
from the sound of things.
Oh, I am spooked.
Oh, you are spooked, are you? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you shouldn't be, because we're the ones doing the spooking.
Oh.
Yes, we formed a coven, of course. Traditionally, you need at least 3 for a coven, but we're pragmatists.
Yeah.
And
well, I have a cat. That's bound to count.
Yeah, we've got a black cat, which is nice.
Yeah.
Got a black cat and a cauldron, which is pretty good. I mean, it's from B&Q, but it's still a cauldron. All right, it's still a big. It's basically, I mean, what is a cauldron but a big metal pot? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we were getting hexed by witches, so I thought, well, what's the best solution to getting hexed by a witch? Hex them back.
Ah.
Now, the problem is, I know absolutely nothing about witchcraft.
Yeah.
Or I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to protect myself against it. But I do have a Blu-ray player.
Ooh.
Which is, I mean, that's like, to someone from 100 years ago, that'd be black magic.
Yeah, well, a lot of things. A lighter would be black magic.
Yeah, actually.
Actually, not even a match would be black magic.
Well, I don't know about 100 years ago for a match.
Well, yeah, okay, I suppose.
Yeah, human beings have had the ability to create fire for a long time. Let's say, I think you're underestimating society there.
Oh, never. It's impossible to underestimate society.
No, but to get our estimation of our rival witches, because I am really sick of finding snakes in my shoes.
Yep.
We've got 3 Blu-rays here. So I have The Witch, or The Witch, depending on how you want to pronounce it.
I think it's just Witch.
Yeah, I think it's just The Witch, yeah. From 2015, directed by Robert Eggers. Ooh. We then also have The Craft.
Ooh.
From 1996, directed by Andrew Fleming. Very on the nose there.
Yeah.
The Craft, Witchcraft, yes.
Yep.
Probably, again, as usual, the one that's named the thing. Maybe it'll be the best one. Probably not. Who knows? It hasn't actually worked out that way at all yet, but so what? Okay, and then also here we have Suspiria, the 1977 version, not the remake, directed by Dario Argento.
I'm sure we'll mention the 2018 one at some point.
Probably going to come up, yes.
It'll probably come up.
I will be compelled to talk about it, yes. But let's turn the heat down on the old cauldron here, because I don't want to burn my stew that I'm making. Ooh. And let's watch these movies. Okay, well, the stew's starting to smell really good. Like 6 hours in the pot will do that for you, I think. I think it needs more. What's the traditional? Is it eye of newt? You always hear.
Frog's legs.
No, that's French. that's just classic French cuisine.
Eye of newt. What else?
Toe of something of frog. Something about a frog, but it's not the legs. I've heard glands. There's such a thing as a frog stone, I believe. Oh, actually, I don't know if there's such a thing as that. That might be a myth of a stone that is inside a frog. Anyway, we don't have any of that crap.
No.
However, maybe we don't need that. So that being, how we're going here, what did you think then of, and what did we learn from maybe we don't need frog stones?
Yeah.
Or toadstones, actually. It's toadstones. So did the witch teach us about toadstones? What did we learn from the witch? And how was it? John, what did you think of the witch?
Oh, the witch is great. I really like this director stroke writer. I like the two movies I've seen of his so far. I haven't seen his shorter movies. I think he's done one on Edgar Allan Poe, an Edgar Allan Poe story. I can't remember what one, but yeah, Robert Eggers. He made The Witch, or whatever way you want to pronounce it. And
let's just call it The Witch, because I'm getting annoyed with the. I think it was just a stylistic thing for the posters more than anything.
Yeah.
That they wrote the double V instead of a
W.
It
all ties into, like, he's very good at kind of really making like a period movie in the sense that like he will do his research. I watched something there. I watched an interview with him, and he, like, a lot of the speech patterns and a lot of what they're saying in this movie is all derived from these scraps that he's found in New England of actual like witch trials and things like this.
There's a block of text that comes up right at the end of the film that says that it was taken from like court documents and minutes and meetings and stuff and things people had said that were officially recorded word for word. So like the mode of speech and everything seems to be taking that and like just direct like parts of the story. I think
so. It's like very interesting. So like even on that, like you can tell he really delves deep into the movies he makes. I mean, he has this and The Lighthouse, and The Lighthouse is absolutely fantastic as well.
Again, I think I've mentioned both of these films on previous podcasts as each of them being some of my favorite films of the last decade.
Yeah.
He's really just immediately established himself as like an auteur director.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate.
Like,
usually someone has to make like a couple of films first and then they get to do their own thing.
Yeah.
But it seems like in fact, I think like thanks to of all people, Chris Columbus, director of writer of and director of Home Alone.
Yeah.
I think he's also, I mean, I'll give him his due. He also is technically like a screenwriter on Gremlins, which I love. Gremlins, directed by Joe Dante, very good film. But it seems like this film was initially financed by a project that he and his daughter established.
Oh.
To like fund new directors and like people. They were like sift through scripts that came from this film school.
Yeah.
And like pick the best ones and then see about getting them made. And I think that's how this film initially got made, because his name, Chris Columbus's name, comes up at the end of it, and I was like, "Wait, what?" And then I just went on a crusade to find out why Chris Columbus and his daughter were involved in this, and it's kind of cool that he does that.
Yeah,
he's done it with a bunch of people now, and it's a really cool thing for someone who has been a successful director. Now, I don't like Home Alone. I think Home Alone I like Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern.
You filthy animal.
Yeah, I like Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern in Home Alone, but as a whole, I do not like that film. I find it obnoxious. But he's been involved in some stuff I like, and he's now he's involved in this.
Yeah.
And I think this film is beautiful and also disturbing at the same time. I mean, right from like the first like 10 minutes, within the first 10 minutes, something extremely disturbing happens, and it's graphic while not being graphic.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's all about like, I mean, he's kind of plays with your imagination a bit, and you're like, I feel like I know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel very, very bad because of it, like right off the bat, and then it's all downhill from there.
Yeah, it really plays on the paranoia. Like I don't think it's one of these ones that it kind of leaves it. But by the end of it, you're not sitting there going, "Oh, is that all in their minds?" It very much plays out, for me anyway. It plays out that yes, this is all actually happening. But the really good thing is like the realization that it's actually all happening kind of slowly develops as well, because you're kind of dealing with the family's paranoia and them suspecting each other and all this like religious dogma playing so much of a part in their perception of things. And it's very well written and very well paced throughout. Like, and you never like it's weird because you never really shake that tension. It all kind of it's constantly there and building up, which you think would be kind of too much for like an hour and a half to be sitting there going, just stop the things.
Because like the usual formula with a horror film is build, release.
Yeah.
Like jump scare or something hugely dramatic happens. And then we have some time to recover, and then during that time to recover, it's build, release.
Yeah.
Whereas this film is just a build.
Yeah. I just
And
constantly
Yeah,
creating
it's like,
more knots in your in the knot.
it's like a really good Nine Inch Nails track where
Yeah.
it starts off kind of making you feel ick,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just sort of builds and layers and layers and layers up as it goes on. And every now and then, yes, something does happen, but it's never that shock horror release. It's usually just more unsettling things. You know,
Yeah.
you don't get huge like things jumping out at people or screams. Like that's something I really like about this movie is the music is like it's more sort of it feels very like organic.
Yeah, it's very sparse, and
Yeah.
so much of this movie, it lets the silences kind of breathe and lets them take over when it needs to. But yeah, you're right. Like when the music comes in, it feels very suited, and it just adds to it. It doesn't like nothing really detracts in this. And I mean, one of the things that really, kind of watching this again, like with a more critical eye, I suppose, I was just bowled over with how good and how important the lighting is in each scene, and so much natural light is used for the scenes. And when it's not, I can't really tell. It's but it adds this like claustrophobic feel to everything, and it's brilliant. Like and he's shown with the lighthouse as well. Robert Eggers has shown that he's kind of mastered the lighting thing. It's so important, and so much more important, I would say, in the lighthouse, especially with it being a black and white film. And I'd say it's almost perfect in that movie, but in this, like you really get that sense, and it completely like puts you in that time period. There's nothing that really kind of, for me anyway, nothing that like takes me out of it. Once I put this movie on, I'm there. It's the 1630s or something like that. Yeah,
I mean it's Puritans in America who are attempting to colonize, but they're also the Puritans. That's central to it. They're the people who were too extreme in their religion for Europe. I think it's painted these days as if they were fleeing oppression.
Yeah.
But what was really happening was they wanted to oppress, and they weren't being allowed because Europe had become a lot more liberal.
Yeah.
And they didn't like that, which is why they all left for America, because they wanted to burn people.
Yeah.
Whereas like one of the myths that sort of goes around about like, witch trials is that like, oh, there was all these witch burnings. In Europe, there wasn't. In Europe, most people who were convicted of witchcraft were acquitted because they were convicted by maniacs, and then the actual courts would come in and say, there's no such thing as witches. You're free to go.
Yeah, you mental case.
Yeah, and the people who were doing that who were sort of doing the convicting initially weren't happy, so they all went to America.
Yeah.
And that's why most witch burnings took place in America.
Yeah.
And that's who these people are. And I don't know if they never really established what it is, but his family has been ostracized from the community because of the way he
at the start,
treats his religion.
Yeah,
They
like
never get specific.
he's too extreme even for the Puritans. Which
is it that he's too extreme?
What the fuck is he doing?
Yeah, they don't ever get specific at all. He just says, "I'll
isn't
worship
necessary
the Lord in my way."
Yeah. It's not really necessary for you get a sense of this character from that very first scene, that like his whole thing is that he's really prideful, and this is kind of what dooms his family, because his pride and not being able to just like go, okay, I'll tone it down, or I'll apologize, because they give him an out. It's like if he just renounce his ways or like apologize or something, they'll keep them in. But he's like, no.
It's like, no, we're going to go and live out in the middle of nowhere on our own with no help from anybody.
And even though he's not equipped, like at one point the wife later in the movie even like has a go at him that he can't no, it's not the wife, it's the daughter, sorry, I think.
Yeah, she really unloads on him. It's after they accuse her of being a witch and stuff, and he's like, she is just pissed off at everybody. Yeah, and I think it's that he lets the mum tear into her.
Yeah.
Because he knows that like why the cup's missing, that she's got a silver cup that he has sold.
Yeah.
because they're desperate, but he doesn't want to tell her. And like she starts being accused by her mum for lifting the cup, and he's sitting there saying nothing. And like she just unloads on him later about that, and she's like, you can't hunt, you can't grow crops, you can't do anything. And it's like, and he's just, that's the thing that cuts him the most.
Yeah,
I think. And like, because
it attacks his pride again, like he's so like for this. And I mean, you find this a lot even in real life. This like super religious person who is supposedly following these teachings of like don't be prideful and all, and they're the worst for it. They're the worst. Like,
he thinks the lady doth protest too much.
Yeah,
Shakespeare once said.
Yeah. And he like the acting in this movie is fantastic.
Yeah.
The fact that this is like Anna Taylor-Joy's first, that this is like her debut kind of movie is shocking. Like she's brilliant in it, and Ralph,
she is almost she's like the central. I'd say she's the protagonist.
Yeah, definitely.
It does mostly follow her around.
And Ralph Ineson as the father as William. They're the two standouts, but that's not to detract from the likes of Kate Dickie.
She's brilliant.
Yeah,
she is so good. She plays desperate and unhinged so well. She is phenomenal. I mean, she was in Game of Thrones, in which she played someone who was definitely unhinged
in a very different way. Like I would say this character's a lot more understandable, and she's lost a child.
Her character in Game of Thrones was almost completely unrelatable, whereas in this she's extremely sympathetic.
Yeah,
you really feel. I think everybody is. I think even like William, I find William to be sometimes incredibly sympathetic because you can tell that he loves his family, he loves his kids, and he loves his wife, and he's trying his best, and his best just isn't good enough. And that's what frustrates him. But he never wants to admit it to anybody. He keeps that secret. Even to the point where he's endangering his children by not discussing things with his wife. Like, I'm just going to go out with my kid and, like, set these traps and, like, all this stuff. And it's like, no, man. And, and the central tragedy, of course, of the film with the babies being missing. He's, like, being the strong one. Mm-hmm. He's trying to be, like you get the sense that he's not necessarily over it, but he's trying to move past it in his head and not deal with it.
Yeah.
Whereas his wife is just losing it about that and never gets over it.
Yeah.
And then you got the whole thing where you're like, you got that great thing going on where you're just like, is this the machinations of this witch in the forest, or is it the creation of is it something of his own making? Is it his fault?
Yeah.
Or did the witch curse their crops? Is that the reason there's no the crops? Because that's something that traditionally people would blame on witches.
Yeah.
And the harvest wasn't good, they blame a witch, and like that's what's happening. But again, that could also just be he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And it's so ambiguous, but it's not ambiguous about necessarily reality. We do get established, they don't, as you said, they don't do that thing. We're like, oh, is there really a witch or is there not? No, there definitely is.
There definitely
definitely is.
There's only so much, and I mean, a lot of it, it could be, you could like go, oh no, I look at this as like symbolism and stuff and be like, no, it is, but it also would not make sense story wise.
It could also symbolize things and also just be real in the film.
Exactly.
I mean that's rife in a lot of films.
It is part of the story structure, and it never like what one. It's like at a certain point in this movie, you get to a stage where it's just like, okay, there's a witch, and shit is happening.
Yeah, people are dying. People start dying, and that's bad.
Yeah.
And I think we need to address this, something that we come up with a lot on the show about child actors.
Yeah,
and the way they write kids, usually being not necessarily that the child actors are the problem, but the way children are written being the problem. I think they nail it in this movie
brilliantly.
Fantastic. Like Caleb's fantastic.
The
middle child, I guess he is. he's like 12 or so or something like that.
He's kind of like the favorite because, well, I suppose time period and all. He's the male. He's the heir. But like he's kind of trying to cover for his dad in a lot of ways, and he's really trying to step up. And he's played fantastically, and the two twins are so annoying, but like they're so well played, and they're so
annoying, but that's so deliberate.
Yeah.
Oh,
they are like nails on a chalkboard.
Like whenever Thomason starts screaming at them, like you feel the ire. You want to scream at them too. Like, shut up, you horrible, horrible, horrible children.
Yeah.
Stop saying those things. You're terrible.
And like just the kind of interactions between Thomason and them, where she starts like making up stuff to like scare them and blah blah blah, and then that's used later.
Yeah.
When people are like they're all starting to accuse each other of being under the witch's thrall or being witches themselves, and it's done so well. Like everything connects well in it, and it doesn't feel forced. It feels quite natural and quite. It feels real for these characters to know these young children like touting on their siblings and stuff.
She did it. It was her. She did it. It's so authentic. With that stuff. As someone who grew up in a house with two other siblings, that is definitely the way things go sometimes.
Yeah.
But I mean, aside from like the narrative stuff and everything, which I think is done brilliantly, like this film just looks beautiful. Now, this is something I'm probably going to talk about a lot on this episode, about things that just look really good. But this film...
The craft, you mean? Yeah.
But this film is just, we were talking before when we were talking about Wendigo and the retreat, when we were doing our Wendigos, about like, how you can choose the right sort of setting for something, and then sometimes you can just have it look good by just being like, here, look at this lovely scenery.
Yeah. Whereas
in this, they do that. That is definitely an advantage, but the shot framing is so spot on. It's definitely got that sort of I can't remember what you call it. It's like the proportional spiral of like the Renaissance paintings.
The Fibonacci,
or
the golden ratio.
The golden ratio thing. It feels like that's happening throughout the film, with like where things are in the scene and the way the
everything's
camera
very
moves.
Deliberate, and you're right. Like each shot, like even the close up of Thomason's face when she's playing peekaboo with the baby. There's like everything just seems so perfectly done. Like even the fact that react, like, because this time watching, I was kind of sitting there going, yeah, that's not how you'd react if the baby suddenly wasn't there. But it's done so deliberately for this, like, because you as the audience don't see the baby disappear really. Like it's all reliant on her reaction, and you can tell just from her face just what has happened, and it's more to let the audience kind of interpret what's happened from her face, and it's done very well. Like the edits in the movie are great. As you say, the cinematography's done very well, and it's very well shot and very I really enjoy this movie. And
as I say, it's one of my favorite films from the last 10 years, maybe even the last 20 years. I don't know. I mean, I haven't sat down and looked at like a list of all the films that came out since like 2001, but this film really stuck with me. I originally saw this in the cinema when it came out, and it was a powerful experience to see in a movie theater. It really, really was. It was so... Everyone was... Which is unusual in a movie theater in Belfast. Everyone was so quiet. Usually, things drop down, it gets quiet, and then somebody decides that's the best time to turn to their mate and go, you know what I think happened? I think she is the witch. And I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that at all. No, it was like you can hear a pin drop, and it was so intense. Now, watching it at home in the dark, still amazing. Weirdly, still just fantastic. So, this, again, I can't stress enough. This is one of my favorite films that has come out. Like, I guess I can use the term this century.
Yeah.
No, couldn't I? This millennium, since the year 2000, this is definitely in my top 5 things.
Yeah.
And the Lighthouse is probably right there next to it as well.
It has to be one of the best feature debuts of a director. It's so well done. And the fact that when you do look through his IMDb, it's not this pages upon pages of stuff. It's literally this, The Lighthouse, and then three or four short movies. You're like, what the hell?
Things that you imagine he made as film school projects, probably.
And then you're like, this guy's only 38. It's like, right, I'm watching it anytime I see the name Robert Eggers. I'm going to have a wee look, see what the crack is.
Yeah, if he's coming out with anything, even if it doesn't review well, I don't care. I will go see it.
Yeah,
because that's the guy, and I've seen plenty of films that didn't review well that I ended up loving. So, stuff the reviewers, except us. Alright, John, so based on the advice from the witch, for the sake of power or whatever, I've ground up some jelly babies and I've rubbed them all over myself. So I'm feeling quite, strong, but I'm also having a bit of a wasp problem.
There's something very Terry Pratchett-y Discord about using jelly babies instead.
Yes. It's like, oh no, we don't use real babies anymore.
It's the thought of it. It's like, oh, you don't need all that crap. That's just frills.
That's just window dressing, All you really need is a jelly baby, 3 drops of mouse blood, and some dribbly candles, eh?
Yeah, that's it. Always the dribbly candles.
Yeah, well, since we're modernizing with our witchcraft, John, what did you think of... What's the director's name? Oh my, I've lost it. Andrew Fleming's The Craft from the far-flung modern time, future times of 1996.
Oh, and it's possibly one of the most 90s movies ever. I remember the very first podcast we did, we talked about how Bram Stoker's Dracula was a very 90s movie and a very 90s cast. This probably beats it for 90s movie, because
it's got Neve Campbell and for Balk in it. So already we're 2 for 2 on
and
extremely
it's set
90s
in
people.
the 90s. They're like the
cool is so bad.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, the music is just it's like post grunge garbage. Sponge are on the soundtrack,
possibly the worst offense, because I kind of agree with the director on this, that he believes that Charmed was basically just stolen, the idea was just stolen from The Craft, which 100%, I kind of agree, especially because the theme music, the intro music for Charmed, comes up in this. It's
on the soundtrack.
Yep.
And it's terrible cover of How Soon Is Now.
Yep. So I kind of think he's got a point there. He seems a bit salty about it as well.
Yeah, I would be. I would be, because Charmed is it's like Diet The Craft, it's like The Craft but toothless.
Yeah.
And I had seen a fair bit. I had accidentally sat in front of a TV a few times while Charmed was on.
We were teenagers, Alyssa Milano was in it,
And I was like, this isn't nearly as good as Buffy in any way, shape, or form. It's so bad. And then, but you just sit there and watch it and be like, that was terrible. Yeah. And then they'd have 3 of them on in a row, so then you just watch 3 of them, and then you'd be like, why did I waste 2 hours of my life on that? This is awful. But yeah, absolutely, 100%, you're correct. The terrible TV show Charmed is kind of a toothless ripoff of this movie in a big way. But what did you think of the movie, John?
It has a few good moments, but overall, I don't like this movie. It's there's a lot of overacting in it, which hilarious. It's kind of, it's not terrible. It's kind of fun to watch if you're in the right mood for it, because you can laugh at, especially for people around our age or older who can enjoy the pure 90s-isms of it.
For people who lived through the 90s as teenagers.
I don't know how. I don't know how that would translate really, but to your younger audience. But it's just kind of fun in that way.
Yeah.
But it's slower than I remember. Like there's not really a plot in a certain sense. Like things just kind of happen. It's like them trying these spells and stuff, but everything almost seems kind of detached in a way, where like scenes don't really lead on to each other. It's just like, here's a scene of this girl getting bullied in school. Here's a scene of them trying to levitate one of them now. It's just like kind of
going through the motions of people learning about witchcraft with no connective tissue.
Yeah, and then eventually you do, like, okay, you do get the scenes later where it's like, oh, now we're going to get a revenge on those people who are mean to us and stuff like this. But for me it just seemed like a bit of a mess editing wise. Like it seemed kind of all over the place. And and I mean, there's no point even talking about the shots. It's kind of very much like I mean the likenesses to Charmed and kind of Buffy are like play into how it's shot. There's no like it almost feels like it's been shot like a TV show. It doesn't feel like a movie.
It's very point and shoot.
Yeah.
Are all the actors in frame? Good.
That's all we need.
Let's go. Yeah, it's like the opposite of, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but the Suspiria is like completely the opposite of this.
Yeah.
But this is the opposite of Suspiria in that, like, yeah, this film is just like, we just put a
the
camera
witch,
on it.
In both these other movies, every shot seems deliberate. But in this, it just, as you say, just the point and shoot seems to be the philosophy.
Yeah,
it's like
there are also a lot of static shots in The Witch, but they're so well considered beforehand, whereas in this, it's just, here's some people in a room. And that's it. That's all you get, really.
And the effects are, I mean, I don't want to rip on the effects too much because it is a 90s movie and it probably didn't have the biggest budget for a movie coming out in 1996 about witchcraft, but the effects look really dated now, and that doesn't kind of help either.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say, John, that I agree with everything you've said, but all of your reasons for not liking it, I think are the reasons I liked it, because it's kind of crappy in that it's like it's got like the production on it isn't great, but it's just about serviceable, and the overacting. I think the overacting is my favorite thing. In fact, Fairuza Balk is again.
She's the best part of this movie.
She's the best film. It's like Skeletor and He-Man. It's like that thing where it's like, this is kind of a bad movie, but this character who is somewhat antagonistic. Yeah. Really. Who's not the protagonist, but is like...
I would go more than somewhat. She's completely antagonistic.
She becomes the antagonist, yes. But like, her performance is fantastic. She carries the movie, and she does it ably. She does it really well, because she is so like... And she got typecast a lot. Yeah. In the 90s, she always played like the sort of on the edge, sort of like... I'm a teenager who, I'm so deep and no one understands me, and but I also may have actual mental issues. Like, it seems like, like an actual, like someone who maybe needs a friend and doesn't really have one and is acting out because of that. That's the character she got landed with a lot. Yeah. But she does it so well. In fact, there's one point in this movie, they get off a bus. And the bus driver's like, watch out for weirdos out here, kids. And she goes, we're the weirdos, mister. And she does this big smile, and at that point, like, leaning into that whole, her getting typecast as people with like who are maybe mentally ill a lot. At that moment I was like, fuck, she would have made a great Harley Quinn. I was just like, I could picture her smashing somebody's head in with a baseball bat and laughing outrageously, and I would take her completely seriously in that role. But hey, anyway, that's just an aside. Yeah. But I like how 90s it is, because I just find it funny every time a song come on in the soundtrack. I had a little chuckle to myself and was like, oh, brilliant, that's so bad. Yeah. and that How Soon Is Now. I forgot that was in this, and then it came on, and I was like, because I was talking about Charmed for like the first like third of the movie about how, wow, yeah, Charmed did just lift this and this and this from this, didn't it? Yeah, it did. And then that came on, and I was like, oh my god, it's the theme tune they actually used in Charmed.
Yeah.
And that's a song I like the original of that song. I like the Smiths version quite a bit. That version is so just like, let's take this song from the 80s, a 90s band taking a song from the 80s and trying to have a hit. You know,
it's
and
very
it's like,
emo. It's very
it's so just like overwrought with the lyrics. I am human and you know, it's don't do that. Like the whole point of that song is that it's like it's miserable and low effort and fed up.
Yeah.
And you're trying to do it like it's some like fucking rock epic, and it sounds awful. It sounds awful, and yet it also sounds too close to the original, and I'm in serious danger of just reviewing this song rather than the film, so I'm going to move on. But yeah, I like the performances because they're like most people's performances are just kind of like serviceable. Like Neve Campbell's fine.
Yeah.
And like the people that play her parents are just playing like detached parents, like the protagonist parents. You know, there's nothing really interesting about them, but they're not particularly offensive. I kind of like the white witch lady. She doesn't do very much.
No.
It's funny that she exists and is taken seriously by anybody.
Yeah, she doesn't like the mere sign of danger. Doesn't she run away or no? Sorry, that Robert Tunney's character runs away. Sorry, I got that mixed up in my head. But yeah, you kind of think that she could probably, you know, surely this woman's been practicing magic. She seems to know a lot about it for much longer and would be more able to stop these rogue witches, but no, she's completely toothless.
She's kind of useless, yeah. I mean, she provides them with all the books that enable them to be horrible, which she should probably bear some of the blame for, really.
Yeah.
If this stuff actually works, and she believes it actually works, she shouldn't be running a goddamn shop that sells this stuff.
And you certainly shouldn't take your cues from the wind. The wind blows the curtains out. Oh, someone must want you to go in there.
Oh, we have to go in there now because there was a breeze. Yeah, now I'm going to be exposition lady. Hey, here's how you defeat the evil. Here's the MacGuffin for the end of the movie.
Here's the spell that every time you use doesn't seem to work, but hey, go for it a third time.
Yeah, and then it'll work the third time because it's narratively convenient that it works now. But I do like some of that stuff. I do like some of the dramatic stuff that happens. Like there's a point where they go out to the beach and they do a thing, and then the next scene is kind of cool where it's like nobody really remembers what's happened in the evening, and then they look down the beach and there's all these like sharks dead on the beach.
Yeah,
that's kind of cool. That's a really cool visual. It's sinister. It's really sinister.
Yeah,
and it's like that is actually kind of messed up. There's some stuff like that going on through it that I enjoy, where there's like you feel like it's hinting at something bigger that it never really gets to. They talk about these big grand things, but it ends up being a very small story about bickering teenagers. Really, more than anything, that's sort of what it's about. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm not going to say it's a good film, but I had a good time watching it. I had a good time this week in general with all of the films, actually. But I mean, this was probably, I don't want to say this was the low point because I did have a great time with it. But, you know, I don't think it deserves like accolades or anything. But The Craft is a fun time.
It's a product of a time. It you know, yeah, it's not going to wow anyone. It's not. It kind of just is what it is. It's this weird wee pocket into the 90s.
Yeah,
you can look at and go, like, wow.
If you've seen Practical Magic, it feels a lot like thematically like Practical Magic with another extremely 90s. Is it Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock, I believe, in that one. And it's kind of it's kind of all right in the same ways that this is kind of all right.
Yeah.
You know,
and I kind of like I mean, the one take I will take from this movie that the other two maybe don't have is like a more balanced look at what witchcraft is, where it's not inherently evil. It's up to the user. If the user is and it's not even like evil. It's like, you know, you kind of understand where Nancy's character's coming from, in the sense of like her upbringing's so horrible. Like she just wants power, she wants something to get out of it. But it like the structure of a good story's in there, and even this idea that they all represent like a different element and a different like compass direction.
They're like north, south, east, and west, and they all have their one that they align with or whatever.
I mean, I think they missed a simple trick where they could have had their characters even be more representative of that element. You know, like the obvious one is like have the fire one be like really hot tempered and things like that. You know, I suppose the earth one, who what do you call Robert Tunney's character, Sarah? I think. You know, I suppose her one is more grounded in a way, but I think they could have done a lot more wee subtle things with that would have helped the characters, because, as you say, apart from kind of Nancy, there's not really much on show. Everyone kind of feels tacked on, or
she is the heart of the film. We have a protagonist played by Robin Tunney, it's Sarah, and she is so boring. And nothing. She's playing this just really generic, I'm the new girl at the school.
And I have a tragic backstory.
I have a tragic backstory because I need to have one because I don't have a character. That's not a replacement for a character. Whereas Nancy is a character who also has a tragic backstory, but I think a lot of her character is inferred through the performance of Fairuza Balk, who is, again, I know I just said it, but she is the central thing in this movie. If it wasn't for her, this movie would be so boring and forgettable. I can imagine. I mean, I guess you could put someone else in that role, but she's the only memorable thing in the film, really, I think, because she's really intense, and she does feel like she always feels like she's about to do something really messed up.
And I mean, I think it's quite telling. Like, I haven't seen it, but apparently in 2020 there was a movie called The Craft Legacy.
There was.
And she reprises her role as Nancy Downs.
Did she show up in it? Oh,
yeah,
man.
I haven't seen it. I just from the IMDb, I was able to see. Oh, right.
I have no interest in seeing it, and I dread the day when we have to watch it because it fits neatly into something in this show. Because I have heard nothing but bad things about it. People have affection for The Craft because I think there is a certain amount of affection for the characters in a way in the script, and in the way they're performed. Again, mainly because of Fairuza Balk. She is the standout in the movie.
Yeah,
she's the thing people remember. I remember that Neve Campbell is in this movie, and there's Rachel True as well as the other witch.
Yeah.
But they don't really do that much themselves.
They're like henchmen for it. You know, there's nothing.
They are, yeah.
I don't know, even the one thing I do kind of like is that everyone, including the protagonists, are all so shallow as well. Because well, spoiler warning, at the end, when she's binded all their powers and stuff, they come up and ask like a real half-hearted apology. Yeah. And they're like, you know, oh, can you still do magic? And she kind of doesn't really answer. And then they show their true colors again of like, oh yeah, she probably can't do anything. And she's so insecure still that she makes like a storm happen, and like a tree like branch almost hits them, and you're just going, Jesus, you should not have this level of power if you're that easy to goad.
She's not responsible. Like, the whole film is supposed to be about her learning to control and be responsible for her power, but then she's still a stroppy teen with it. Yeah, but I will say overall, mainly because of Fairuza Balk, I really did still enjoy this film. Okay, well, we tried to do the old light as a feather, stiff as a board, but with just me doing it on my own, trying to lift John with my two fingers, didn't really work.
Yeah, and I've kind of put on a few pounds since we last tried this.
I've got a mild sprain now, which is not helping. So
could have been worse.
It could have been worse. You're right. So I'll rub some wormwood on here, and that will. Oof. Okay, that burns. That's not healing. Okay, I have learned nothing about witchcraft, it seems.
Yeah.
And this like sort of sticky jelly baby sort of coating's getting really uncomfortable now. So maybe I should have used the real thing. I don't know. But anyway, maybe there's something else, some other nugget of wisdom we can glean from Dario Argento's Suspiria. Ooh. So, John, what did you think of Dario Argento's Suspiria?
It's pretty awesome. It's it looks fantastic. Just what you alluded to when we were talking about the craft there. That the shots the shots are very clearly very deliberate. There's a his use of color, like he's going for these like really bright, mostly primary colors, and it looks fantastic. It's very well shot.
Especially like the one that I watched in particular is one that was specifically restored.
Yeah.
There was this big block of text to come up at the beginning actually about the restoration process. I
watched the same one.
Yeah. And I gotta say, because I've seen this film many times, and I always thought it was colorful, but this time around, oh my, it kind of blew my mind. This time it was so vibrant, and intense. This time, like the way it was originally intended to be. So that's pretty goddamn good. Yeah. But anyway, as you were saying, John,
it really helps. Like this movie story wise, there's not that much going on really. This American girl goes to a German ballet academy and things aren't quite right, and she eventually finds witches. Let's just put it like that.
Spookiness ensues.
Yeah,
you might say.
Exactly. Yes. But what really makes this movie stand out is Dario Argento's direction and his use of the color. His the shot composition's fantastic. And the music. The music's so oppressive. As soon as she goes out into the rain from the airport, it almost like it attacks you. It's
cacophonous at times.
Yeah, like really, and it's a mixture of kind of like new, well, for the time, like Moog kind of synthesizer sounds and acoustic instruments, and it works very well.
Yeah, there's a lot of really aggressive percussion going on, which is really unnerving.
Yeah, and I mean,
just thrashing at drums and boxes or whatever the hell it is they're hitting. I don't know, but it sounds real good.
Yeah, and I mean that it almost just it puts you into that horrible feeling from the get go. As soon as she steps out in the rain, that's it. You're like, it just doesn't feel right, and gives you that sense that the witches are already kind of controlling things. They're already an influence at this point, even before any of them are really shown or before you know any of them are witches. But no, it's amazingly well done movie. And I mean, I would even this movie was remade in 2018. They're very, very different. They're different in like the most significant ways, because the thing about Suspiria, the Dario Argento Suspiria, as we said, is the color palette is so vibrant and intense, like it's hitting you in the eyes constantly with the color. And like there is a certain amount of brevity to this movie. It's like an hour and 40 minutes and whatever, and that's like a good length for a horror movie. Yeah. But this remake, the remake's very grey and beige for the most part, and also it's like twice as long as well, which is weird. Yeah. There's a lot of strange decisions, but I guess if it's another director taking a story and putting his stamp on it and saying this isn't just the same film again. Well, he went out of his way to make it different, like the lack of color, like the more kind of drowned out colors were to set it aside, aside from the 70s, and I think he made the right choice, because what do you do then? Do you just like make a carbon copy of it, and then what's the point if you're doing that?
Yeah, because the thing with it is as well something that sometimes people get annoyed when they remake a film that that someone likes, and that can be justified sometimes if it's cynical, But sometimes a remake isn't cynical, and I don't feel like the Suspiria remake was cynical at all because of how it is. It's not they didn't just wrap it up and turn it into some crappy brainless popcorn flick.
No.
It's this brooding, dark, intense, sort of Cold War era story.
And it has some of it, like some of the visuals in it are as disturbing and as grotesque as the 70s one.
There's one particular scene which
the girl
is
dancing.
one of my favorite horror scenes. Again, for like, in the last, like, again, I've been saying this a lot this episode, but like the last like decade or so, it's so disturbingly grotesque. She's dancing and she can't stop moving, and her bones and her muscles are shattering and snapping.
Yeah.
And it's just so visceral.
Yeah.
And it really gave me the heebie-jeebies. And of course, the whole washed out color palette thing takes a turn at one point. I feel like the color palette is washed out and drab because the final scene is the mirror opposite of the rest of the film.
Yeah.
Like the end of the Suspiria remake, I don't want to say what happens, but it gets fucking buck wild in the last 5 minutes. It goes fucking nuts, and it's brilliant.
Whereas the original, the 70s one, seems to be kind of buck wild from the get-go.
It's great. That's what I love about it, is it like it's so colorful and vibrant, and the camera is so alive in this film. Like a lot of films from the 70s are very, very static shot and very just like, here's two characters, whatever. Whereas the camera's always sort of slowly moving, and you get the feeling that the actors have had to, much like the dancers in the movie, have had to choreograph their movements around where the camera is going to be. Especially, it's mostly happens when you're in the dance studios in the film. The camera's always shifting around, and people are coming in and out from behind the camera and stuff, and it gives it this real frenetic feeling of like being there and being sort of unsettled because you always feel like you're moving towards something. There's one particular scene where she's like in the dance studio, and the camera's constantly, from the start of the movie, it goes from one side, the left side of the room, to the right side of the room over the course of the entire scene, just at this constant sort of move. I'm making the motions with my hands, which I realize is dumb for an audio format show, but John knows what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you're doing.
And sometimes you get a really unsettling feeling of movement, and it seems to me, I didn't look into it, but from looking at what was happening, there's one particular point where she goes into a room when she's looking for a secret passage, and it feels like as the camera is moving around the room, it feels like the set is turning the other way around her.
Yeah.
Because the room is this circular shape, and it feels like the room is turning rather than just the camera.
That room's amazing because I did anyway. I lost all sense of kind of, proportions and things. Like, I couldn't tell even what shape that room was, and it's all to do with what you're saying. It's the camera work and just gives you that disoriented. You feel like that character. You feel as disorientated as she does at that point.
Yeah, because she's wandering around and she doesn't know what she's looking for. And she's a little bit intense. It's really intense because like she's hiding. She's alone in this school ostensibly, except for the staff who she's trying to avoid. And she's definitely frightened, and you really feel unsettled. It gives you almost a sense of vertigo. Yeah, like it's almost dizziness happening.
It's also, there's a load of great shots in this, and a load of great moments. There's her friend who is kind of suspects something's wrong before the protagonist does. When she goes looking for the staff and seeing what they're up to, there's a brilliant moment where like you just see the eyes of this guy, and the rest of him is all painted black, and he's in the shadows. And it's one of those moments we've talked about before of like nothing really happens for a while, like, but this person is behind her, and it's like, I don't like it. I don't like it. She's shifting along sideways, and you see the eyes behind her, and she moves in front of them. Yeah, and so whatever it is right behind her, and you're just like, oh no. And then she gets away as such, but that whole scene is brilliant. I love that chase scene. Yeah, because the way it ends is it's daft because
it's playing with your perspective in a way rather than the perspective of the character in the scene.
Yeah.
Because like there's a point where she is like trying to get out of the room. She's locked herself in a room, and that person seems deliberately and expertly trying to open the bolt from the other side with the razor to get her to try to escape, you know?
Yeah.
But like she does this thing that if it really happened, it would be daft. But when you see it in the movie, I feel like it's fine. Because like she climbs through a window and then she's there, and then she turns around and sees a door. But she doesn't look down at the floor ever.
No.
And we don't see the floor until it's too late, and she jumps and ends up in a bunch of razor wire that's just there. Like, it's the whole thing. I guess the whole thing is that, like, you know, it's witches mazing her and confusing her. So it becomes acceptable that that's happening. And that actually is one of the points of the film that I found most disturbing was when she's in the razor wire and she's writhing around, because it really, again, that gave me skin crawling feelings.
That was also like, I mean, for the actual actress, you know, they obviously just have wire in there, like it's not dangerous for her, but
it's still
that
wire,
stuff
like,
still like it nips you, and you know, bits of wire getting caught in your skin, and like that was I did kind of look it up a wee bit to see, but apparently the actresses were kind of tortured in this movie.
Yeah, like they do a lot of, you know, like physical stuff. I mean, they're dancing a lot of the time. You know, there's a lot of actual like ballet happening in this film.
Yeah.
And also people falling in ways that seem bad. Like the main actress is throwing herself around all over the place.
Yeah.
She does at one point she does one of the most cartoonish faints I think I've ever seen. It's like it's the first time she faints, and when she feels faint, and she puts her hand up against her forehead and everything, and like, oh, and drops to the floor.
Like I will say though, like, give her dues, because at the end part there's like things kind of exploding, and she didn't know she didn't know what was going to explode and what wasn't, and so like that terror that she has when she's running through the building is real, because she does not know if she's going to get blown up because of
That's messed up.
Yeah, it's really messed up.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it was directed in such a way that it's like, you follow this path, because you can see the floor and they usually have markers for, you know, it was just like kind of probably looser of like, get to this door after you're like kind of shocked and looking at
it's
this.
like, here's where you're starting and you have to end up here.
Yeah.
But that's it. How you get there is up to you. But also we're going to be blowing things up in random places.
And don't die.
Be sure not to stand too close to the explosions. Oh, where are the explosives? Oh.
Wouldn't stand near that.
Yeah, so this film is gorgeous. The performances are great, but also not great.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I think so. But part of the problem with some of the performances in this movie is that there's people from a lot of different nationalities, and they did a lot of overdubbing after the fact. So a lot of the overdub, like, you can tell even when it's you know, the like of our main character Jessica Harper, that's the actress's name, sorry, but the likes of her, who is American and was speaking American at the time, speaking English at the time, and then overdubbed it in English, you know, later. It still isn't quite right. The overdubbing is always slightly off, and it's like,
it's something
a wee bit off.
There was what became a genre, I guess.
Yeah.
In the same way that we had spaghetti westerns in the 70s, like, which, if people don't know why they're called spaghetti westerns, it's because they would ship a couple of American actors over to Italy, and then they would get local production crew, local director, local cast, and that would save them a huge amount of money as opposed to filming in Hollywood. And they'd film it with those people, and then later, because those people maybe couldn't speak great English or had really strong accents, they would then go back to America and dub it over. Yeah. And that's sort of, then they started doing that with other things. So this is what's like what became known as giallo horror. Yeah. Which is basically the equivalent of spaghetti western for horrors. Like Lucio Fulci is one of the main proponents of that. I mean, he did zombie flesh eaters and stuff. So a lot of this is just like, here's the people we have here, and we'll get them to do the lines. But don't worry, it's that old, we'll fix it in post. Yeah. We'll fix it in post. They don't really fix it that well. but it's serviceable, I think.
I mean, I did find out that a lot of sets and stuff were being made while people were shooting the scenes, which it's kind of crazy to know that they had to remain in character and speak to someone who, say you're Jessica Harper and you're talking to someone Italian or German actress, and you don't understand Italian or German, so you're having to try and guess when their sentence ends because you don't speak the language, and then you're responding and they're having to just do the same, and all the while you have people building sets behind you really loudly. It's absolutely insane.
It's crazy that it must be so difficult for an actor to cope under those circumstances.
And apparently Argento used to play the soundtrack really loudly so, to put them on edge and make them very Kubrick-esque, trying to get a kind of wrought performance out of them all by torturing them essentially.
Yeah, the soundtrack that he made with his band Goblins. It's kind of like a John Carpenter in that way, where he'll do most of the music himself.
Yeah.
John Carpenter. Well, with a band or
actually,
something. And
that's another thing. I think the music. I think the music's really inspired John Carpenter. I haven't looked into it too deep, but it really reminds me of Halloween. It's very similar to that almost a toy piano sound.
Yeah.
And I think he was definitely influenced by this movie for making Halloween.
Yeah, I could see that easily.
Yeah.
The way it's shot, even is the way the camera moves. In fact, as well, is something that happens a lot where people will be walking along and the camera will slowly follow them or move around them in a scene. That happens in Halloween quite a bit. And again, that is just this film, even if you don't know what's happening in this film and you're not paying attention to the story, which, as you said, is quite simple. It's witches run a school and they're up to no good. Yeah. And an American comes in and ruins everything by being too observant, essentially. Whereas everyone else is just dipshits who are just going along with it, apparently. But this film is just, I would call this film just a feast for the eyes. Especially this newer sort of revamped, remastered, redeveloped version. I don't know. They have an explanation that how basically right after they did the cinema print, every subsequent copy of it just looked like garbage. Because all the original prints were left to rot essentially and weren't properly stored. So they had to do a lot of work to get this back to the level it was supposed to look like, and it looks phenomenal.
Yeah,
it really looks so gorgeous, and the lighting is beautiful. The movement of the camera is great. The proportions are just fantastic. The sets look amazing at times. Is this one of the first sets you come across where the first person to die in the film has run off to her friend's flat, and she walks into the lobby of the apartment complex, and my God, I assume that's a set they built, but I wish that place existed.
Yeah, because
that is just a gorgeous room. It's this weird sort of off pinkish red, and it's got this weird sort of it almost looks like an abstract piece of art with the shapes and stuff in it, and it's just beautiful. And the weird I love the stupid light above the elevator that's like a jewel with 3 parts on it that light up depending on what floor it's on. Someone put a lot of thought into that, and it's only on screen for 20 seconds. But it's incredible. The whole film is like that. All the sets look amazing. The colors are so, I can't stress enough how just, because it doesn't necessarily look, he's not going for a realistic look. He's just going for striking.
Yeah.
Because the blood is extremely red in a way that isn't very realistic.
Almost comically so.
Yeah, it almost stabs at the eye whenever it comes out, even when people aren't being stabbed in the eye. It's just it's so intense, and just there's all these lights in the scenes where it's just the lights are changing, and sometimes the light will frame a character. There's one particular scene where our main character Susie is on a bed, and her friend, I think Sarah, is sitting on the bed next to her.
Yes.
And behind them, there's colors haloing the both of them projected on the wall behind them, and it just looks great.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is one of my favorite horror films, I think, generally of all time.
I mean, the only kind of negative thing I really have to say about it is that occasionally, like it does lose the pace in a wee bit. Like in particular, like just when you're saying about Susie and her friend, them counting steps, this kind of repeats quite a lot, and it's like we don't need that as long as it is. But I mean, it's a real minor thing.
Yeah, they want to make sure that that's a plan that they have, so that later...
Which is really ridiculous as well. I love how stupid the plan is, because like
so
this building is massive. Like at some point you're going, how the fuck do you hear those footsteps up in the bedroom?
They are so far away. They're like 2 floors up from where this is all happening, and they're able to count all the steps and know exactly which direction they're moving in. And it's that is absolute nonsense. But it's so... I think the fact that they set it in this surrealistic sort of way, and they present it in a surreal way, that you can kind of just brush that off if you want. If you want to pick on that stuff, pick away. I don't care. That's fine. I'm going to just enjoy Suspiria.
Yeah, that's a good... I still love the movie, and I like... Yeah. As I say, it's very... it's very minor wee things that I would pick on for it, but no, as a whole, like it's very effective, and it's, I mean, it's a classic for a reason.
Okay, well, my eyes are bleeding, but my mouth is smiling. So I think all these hexes are really starting to take hold. This jelly baby skin has done nothing.
Yeah.
The wormwood,
just made you very sticky and covered in ants as well.
I've got ants and wasps, and I've got a huge rash, and like this cauldron's bubbling away here, and I've got like, I don't know. I mean, it smells delicious and all that, but I don't know if it's gonna help us like fend off the machinations of our rival coven. And yeah, I think maybe I'm bleeding internally as well, and I can kind of feel razor blades coming up my throat. So, before we solve that problem, John, which of these did you think was the best movie?
This is actually difficult.
I was thinking the same thing.
I mean,
well,
out of all these, I don't know which one is the best film. Parts of the podcast, I think this is the hardest one I've had to do, because I mean, the craft isn't really going to be in this.
I think I was pretty emphatic about the fact that I definitely did enjoy the craft.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to give it any accolades or anything. I can sit through it and watch it, and it's grand, and Fruza Balk is brilliant in it. But the other elements of the film don't really live up to the promise of her ridiculous, awesome performance. Yeah. Really. Everyone else kind of is whatever and underwhelming for the most part.
I agree. Yeah. It's serviceable, but yeah, it's not going to wow anyone. Yeah. Unlike the other two movies. Yep.
Which are considered and artful and beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And both of them.
Yeah. It's a difficult one, because I mean, what I love about them, they both kind of share in different ways, but like the shot compositions, the lighting, it's a difficult one to pick. I think I might go for The Witch, simply because the use of the natural light in that really astounded me this time. Like when I rewatched it here, it was just like I was blown away with how complicated it would have been for, especially like those inside shots. Like we're all like candle lit, and they must have had something else, because candles don't generally give you much light, but they managed to like light this setup using just things like this, and it looked very natural. It looked real, and it really did kind of help make the scene, and just the fact that like all the performances are so strong. Yeah, the direction is great.
It does extremely have that going for it over Suspiria in a way. Yeah.
But I do love Suspiria because it looks amazing, and like the performances aren't terrible, and they're kind of part of the enjoyment, you know.
Yeah.
As you said, you know, part of that whole like subgenre was kind of this, that like, you know, he did those movies, Demon and Demons 2, and they like, they're not as good as Suspiria, but they're produced by him. Enjoyable.
I believe that's Lucio Fulci, who is the ultimate progenitor, the ultimate like he's the guy that he made so many of those kinds of films.
Yeah.
I love Demons a lot. Demons 2 is great too. I like the first one a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's so obviously, I don't know if anybody in that movie is speaking English. I don't know if anybody has that as their first language in that movie, because the whole film seems dubbed to me really not very well, but that's almost the appeal of Demons, I think, although some of the special effects in Demons are actually kind of great as well. They're really grotesque.
Like part of the fun is that like kind of badly overdubbed thing, and you know, especially like especially finding out like what the actresses had to deal with in Suspiria, with them building sets and with Argento being a lunatic and torturing them, you know, you can kind of see like, okay, those performances are actually a lot better than I gave them credit for initially, because that's insane, trying to concentrate on so much while having so many distractions around you. But even just as we keep saying, the colors, the shots, I mean, that room at the end that I can't work out its dimensions.
It's so weird. The whole thing is just so
it's so unique as well. Although I mean, the Witch has that as well. It's very unique and damn, this is
they're both just extremely well made, well considered, beautiful films. The Witch has more of a solid core of a dramatic story than Suspiria does, if you want to give it points for that, which you could absolutely. The dialogue's really good as well. Like I like the dialogue in Suspiria, but it is ludicrous at times.
Well, apparently the initially it was written where the girls were going to be 12. It was meant to be like young girls at this school, and that's why they say a lot of the dialogue seems a bit kind of naive, coming out of adults.
It is skewed younger. There's a point where there's two girls sticking their tongues out at each other as if that's like the most offensive thing ever, and it just comes off as ludicrous. Which would make sense if they were 12 and not like 18 or whatever it is that they are in the film. But I think again, I don't know. I think Suspiria.
Every time I go for one, I'm like, but the other one?
I think Suspiria, because Suspiria, it might be just like because I have an affection for that film that goes back a way. And I've seen it a lot of times, and it was very affecting, and it was one of the first really strange horror films I think I ever saw. Whenever I was younger, I had seen slashers and I'd seen sci-fi ones and stuff like that, and then I saw Suspiria, and I was like, this is so odd. You know, it's like, it's not like a lot of horror films I was watching when I was a teenager maybe were like, again, in a way like The Craft, like we're just shooting this, we're pointing and shooting, you know? And then you see something like Suspiria and you're like, wow, look at that. This whole room is like weirdly like everything's bright pink with this like shock of green over here, and it's really like it's just like absorbs like sucks at the eyeball or something. I don't know. You're like, ooh, you get like transfixed on it. So
even the exterior shots are wonderfully done. Like the blind piano teacher when he meets his end, so to speak. You know, that just looks amazing. It's so well shot that it looks incredible. Like just this eerie sense of kind of too much space, too much nothing.
he's in this huge open space, but there is no one around, and it feels weird that there's no one around, and he feels weird because there's no one around as well.
It doesn't feel natural, and then of course you've got the crazy goblin music happening.
Yeah, that just comes in and and you get that whole like from the perspective of something swooping in, and you don't know what's happening, and you think something's going to attack him.
Yeah,
and then his dog turns on him.
Yeah.
And that's like, whoa. And that I think that's a really good witchy thing, of like, they're not necessarily always doing it themselves. Yeah. They're working their machinations to have bad things happen to people.
Yeah.
Which is what happens with the girl with the razor wire, and it happens to him getting gored. But then, the first kill in the movie is definitely someone coming in through a window with big scary arms and stabbing someone
but
in a ridiculous fashion.
Yeah, even that gets explained away by the newspapers and by the police that it's this crazed killer on the rampage. So there's no link to them essentially. It's just one of their students just so happened to get gutted. Yeah,
and like they do some victim blaming there, where they try to make out like the women, the witches that run the school, try to be like, we warned her about hanging out with, as if it was a boy she was hanging out with was dangerous or something. Like it was somehow her fault. Yeah. Also, the scene where she dies looks incredible. I'm just gonna go off on one about Suspiria again. Like the point where she gets stabbed, and then they have that stained glass window. Yeah. There's something about that shot with her head through the stained glass window hanging down. Mm-hmm. It just looks great. It just looks so good.
Yeah.
And it's like it's like in the early sort of parts of the film, and it really like establishes the tone for the rest of the film, I think. And it's just it's so good. So yeah, you know what, I'm gonna go with Suspiria. I love the witch. I think the witch is brilliant. I think everybody in the witch is fantastic.
Yeah. I think I'll go for the witch because it just blew me away when I seen it first. And then for him to come out with The Lighthouse after this, it has made me really excited for a director, which I haven't really kind of had in a while. So this is kind of almost...
I have a couple of working directors that I feel really passionately about, and he's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
It's him and James Gunn, I think.
Yeah.
James Gunn has
Very
started
different.
to lean extremely. Like they both play around in the horror genre.
Yeah.
But in very, as you say, very different ways. Like I love James Gunn's style, and I love how over the top yet heartfelt and just poignant James Gunn can be, while doing something ludicrous like there's a film he did called Super, which I actually find extremely moving, but it is so daft. It's so over the top and ridiculous and unsettling at times, actually, with just like the whole like, this person is dangerous. Yeah. But I'm enjoying watching him be dangerous and, a nightmare in a way. But it is can be incredibly moving, So I like him and Robert Eggers. Robert Eggers is, I hear a film from either of these people is coming out, or even like is attached to them in some way. Then I'll be like, right, I'm going to watch that. Yeah. So he's got a new film called The Northman, I think is what it's called, and I'm very excited to see whatever that is. I'm
looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, so props to Robert Eggers. I didn't pick your film, Robert, but
I think the amount of work that he puts into even getting the backstory and getting the setting right. I love things like that where I mean, movies are notorious for taking liberties, and I'm sure this one does as well, but to make it more cinematic, and it's understandable why movies do this, but I really do appreciate when someone goes out of their way to try and really make it as close to the source material. And I watched an interview with him, actually kind of promoting this film at the time, so before this movie came out, and he apparently was writing a lot of scripts and trying unsuccessfully, kind of no one was really taking them because he was more interested in doing like kind of a more genreless kind of thing. And I suppose you could say The Lighthouse is kind of genreless in that sense.
Yeah, I wouldn't know where to put that movie.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is it a horror film? I don't know.
Which makes me more excited. But this was how he kind of got his foot in the door as well. You know, was he decided, right, I'm going to make a genre movie. Then I'm going to make a horror about witches. There we go. let's see. And it worked for him. And
yeah,
like I'm very excited to see where his career goes after this.
Yeah, absolutely. He's fantastic. Robert Eggers, we love you.
Yeah.
I chose the Dario Argento movie because it means a lot to me, but your film was brilliant. So, John, that being the case then, so you're having The Witch. I'm going to keep a hold of Suspiria tightly in my arms. But which of these three films teaches us the most about the practice and or protection from witchcraft?
I don't think The Witch gives us much.
No, it doesn't. It's deliberately obscure with the witchness of it, isn't it?
Just when it's about to kind of delve into it, to know it ends.
Yeah.
You do get wee glimpses, of course, to know apparently there's a lot of mincing up babies and things like that.
Yeah, implied
baby mincing of babies.
Yes. Yeah.
And other really disturbing, horrible things.
Yeah.
But I don't think it would be helpful to learn witchcraft. It seems that you're just kind of chosen at some point.
Yeah. Suspiria talks a lot about witches.
Yeah.
And we get actually one of the weirdest scenes in the movie for me, not because it was weird, but because it has Udo Kier in it.
Yeah.
Speaking in a way that is definitely not Udo Kier's voice.
Yeah.
Because I know what Udo Kier sounds like. I'm very, very, very familiar with his voice.
Yeah.
And he's talking like the all-American man.
Yeah, it is really.
And like the lip sync in that scene is actually really, really good.
Yeah. It took my wife a while to recognize that it was Udo Kier, and like she's going, wait a minute, is that? And I think it was because the overdub voice sounds nothing like him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but it's funny.
Yeah, like his lip syncing with the overdub was actually spot on, but that made it worse. It was like that uncanny valley of like, that's someone I recognize, but that's not what they sound like.
Yeah,
but that looks like exactly like that's him talking, and that kind of disturbed me. But that whole scene, they get into like psychology in that scene of like witchcraft and why people do it, or what it could really be actually, and whether or not it works or not. Is like there's a really old psychologist guy there who it's not clear whether he believes people can do witchcraft.
He seems to. Yeah, it's kind of like heavily implied. And because I remember thinking, how does he still have his job?
Yeah, because like he would have been
laughed
hounded
out of the building.
Everyone respects him though. Yeah. Like I mean, everyone seems to be gathering around him. Like, oh my god, it's him. He's amazing. Yeah, like he sounds like
he believes in witches, so just don't bring that topic up.
Don't bring that up. Like, talk to him all day about Carl Jung and maybe bring up Freud a little bit. Don't mention fucking witches, because we'll be here all day. Yeah, but so he's a bit weird. So he goes into that in the craft. In the craft, they talk a lot about the mechanics of it in a way.
I kind of think I think the craft might be the most useful one, in the sense that, you know, it kind of shows you that their powers are from elements and things like the directions, apparently.
It does. Yeah, wind seems to be a big thing. Wind happens a lot.
Yeah, and you know, you even have the magic shop there. You've got her exposition lady who
exposition witch,
who explains a bit, and I think there is more information about witchcraft.
Absolutely, yeah. She's the one who's all like, that's the only one where they're like, oh, it's not just black and white like you were saying before.
Yeah, there
is like, it's grey, it's good and bad. You know, there's no such thing as black magic or white magic. Yeah, it's just, you know, what you do with it.
And
I guess
they even mention the what would you call it, like a deity kind of thing?
Manon, which is clearly like a French word, I guess.
I think it's actually a French name.
Is it Mano? Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's actual people called that, which would be funny. It's just some French woman or man.
Pretty
I
sure
don't know. I don't even know.
I think there's somebody in Amelie called Mano. Actually, now that I think of it,
they're all right. So they're worshipping her or him.
They're worshipping some dude from Amelie. Yeah, it's a good movie. Like,
yeah, that's a great movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely it goes into things a lot more. Shows you them actually doing spells.
It does.
Shows you what else? Yeah, long story short, this is probably the best one to learn how to use.
Definitely the
witchcraft.
best one to use it. But it seems like you kind of already have to be talented, maybe, to do it, because they all suck until protagonist lady shows up, and she's like the witchcraft powerhouse, she's the engine that runs their spells. It seems. Well,
actually, I suppose, right? So we clearly have no talent for witchcraft.
Yeah, we clearly have no talent. Yes.
Which, the protagonist from Suspiria didn't show any signs of being able to use witchcraft, and she just stabbed. She just stabbed a witch.
Stabbed an old lady, and then
witches be crazy.
Witches be crazy indeed, and not the other meaning of that phrase, because that's just rude, John. But witches do be crazy. So it seems like all we really need is a big knife.
Yeah.
All right, and you know what? They are in the next room, so.
Let's gut us some witches.
Big reveal. Let's just go gut us a witch. Cool. Awesome. Right. Bread knife. Oh, I've only got a bread knife. That's bad.
That's fine.
This is gonna get sloppy. Okay. Right. Well. Nope. Snakes in my boots again. Right. Well, I can't wear those. And now I've got ants under my clothes again. Is this a curse or is this my fault? I feel like rubbing myself down with the jelly babies has actually made all these things happen. Maybe they're not cursing us at all.
It's just a couple of goth girls just sitting in a room.
Yeah,
reading poetry, and you've just...
Yeah, and I'm clearly allergic to this wormwood, so that's probably why my eyes are bleeding. Right? Because I keep rubbing my eyes with it. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry to all the witches out there. I take it all back. If we were going to try to defeat you, we would use the craft. But I guess I just need to stop being a Burke.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do. Cool. Awesome. Right, well, that's all we have time for this week. I'm just going to wash all this stuff off and be fine. We are on Twitter. We are at 7 Day Apocalypse. That's at numeral 7 Day Apocalypse. Our email address, if you want to email us, is filmcast@thisweeksapocalypse.com. That's filmcast@thisweeksapocalypse.com. Be sure to visit our YouTube channel to listen to our full episodes we have up there. We've also started doing truncated edition diaries, which are little sort of half an hour summaries of the episodes. If you don't have like an hour and a half to commit of your life, you can go and do that. That'd be cool too. So until next time, light as a feather, stiff as a board. Light as a feather, stiff as a board.
Okay.
Let us. Yay!